Welcome back to your Kings of Columbus Sunday Sound Off. Bill Landis, Doug Lesmerises. Landis, if I could encapsulate what our Ohio State texters are feeling after Ohio State's win over Penn State, it would be in these three words. We're back, baby. I think I'm actually quoting one text, but encapsulating the vibes of many, many others. Ohio State fans are really embracing this win. Some of them are seeing it as a turning point. There's an interesting comparison I want to ask you about that a texter brought up. They have reevaluated. There's a lot of mea culpas. I'm sorry I ever doubted you as a theme of some of these vibes. And you and I were just discussing, sometimes there are assumptions made, we think, with the Ohio State-Penn State series. And we wondered if there would be some Ohio State fans who just thought, well, you're supposed to beat Penn State. And that is not at all the vibe. They are into it, man.
Good, because I don't necessarily feel that way either. There have been times in the past where I have, but I do not feel that way after this game. And I think a lot of it might be, we weren't there. I was just watching videos, like Ryan Day's reaction to it. And I don't know that I've seen him show that kind of emotion post game before. So like my view on it is, it doesn't matter whether or not we view it as like the kind of win that answers the questions that people had about Ohio State. It matters whether or not Ohio State views it that way, and then what it can do for them now moving forward. So that's really all that matters. And I say that as someone like I also believe that this was a huge win, right? Like a win that showed me something, a win that Ohio State fans should feel really good about. And if you want to shout, "We're back" from the rooftops, please do so. But I really think what matters most is how Ohio State feels about this win and what it says about them and what it says about what they can accomplish. And it feels like, listening to Ryan Day's post-game press conference, he feels like this could be a catapult to something bigger now this year. So whether as an observer you believe that or not doesn't really hold much sway. I don't think.
I do think it matters though how the fan base feels, because I do think
it matters. It matters how they feel, for sure. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of feelings, but I don't know. I something about the way that this team responded to this win just really helped frame my view on it. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I'm with anybody who thinks that this win actually meant something about said something about who this team is, and wasn't merely an expected result in a Penn State Ohio State game because of whatever James Franklin or whatever the history of the series.
Obviously, it matters more inside the Woody, and I do think that Ryan Day was admitting that we weren't saying it, but we realized inside the building that this was a moment. We had to have this. This is a line in the sand. That was like some honest reflection. But I think there could be a situation where the team and the program and the building feels like this is a huge win. Let's go. And the fan base thinks, well, you're supposed to win that game. I still want to see more. And they always feel it. Like they talk about it too much, I think, sometimes, actually. Like that we're just out here with fans, like everyone's having fun. This is not for the players and the coaches. This is for the people who love this program and have passion for it. Mm-hmm. That's why we talk about it. Like, so sometimes like just ignore us. But if the fans were like, I don't know, I think Ryan Day could go up on Tuesday and be like, well, it might not please everybody else, but it pleases everybody here. Instead, I think everybody's in lockstep. We're in this together. We're back, baby. We believe in you again. And I now think that maybe this fan base is in as good of a spot as it has been in since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This is Michael. We are all the way back in caps. Are we perfect? No. But you can't tell me we aren't the second best team in the country. Georgia escapes Florida this week, and Carson Beck is a problem. Texas has looked bad. We lost to the best team on a weird last possession. College football has a 1A and a 1B. Oregon's the 1A. Ohio State's the 1B. Everyone else can cram it. Like we are back. And again, there's some stuff here that really makes me happy for Ohio State fans. This is Seth. I love this team in all caps. French Vanilla and Dollar B. I was worried for this game. I had dreams of Carter wrecking everything, Abdul Carter. This newly built offensive line played their butt off and took over a game in a way we haven't seen in years. Jim Knowles Here are your flowers, sir. You put on a masterclass. All around, a resounding response from a team and a staff on the ropes. That's Seth in Denver. Like, love this team in all caps, Landis. Like, again, this is the expectations are high at Ohio State. This is not where people always are. This is Jackson. I think this is a great one. Ohio State is favored heavily every game except for like 2 each year. So it's hard to feel, quote, proud of how the Bucks play most of the time because W's are expected. But today I was proud. A scrambled offensive line coming off a game where they might have played a bad game, as bad of a game as any of us have seen in a while. Before the game, I doubted whether or not they could just be competent. And to be this impressive, like pride. How about that? Again, that's not pride is like Indiana fans are proud right now. Proud is what you are of an underdog. Ohio State's the ultimate overdog. I love hearing fans say they're proud, Landis.
Yeah, I mean, there was some of that sentiment prior to the Oregon game too. Like some of the responses we got after some other games, even games that were blowouts. I think maybe even the Iowa game might have been where I noticed them the most. Were about how much people like love the team and love the way the team played. And I don't know that any of that dissipated. Like feelings about how the team played, I don't think dissipated after the Oregon game because Ohio State played well there, it just didn't win. But then obviously a lot of that did kind of go away after the Nebraska game for valid reasons, I think. But I thought that Ohio State has more consistently this year been the team that has like showed up and I think played pretty well. So this was, I think, more of a reflection of what this team actually is. And I'm glad that people are sort of re-engaging with those feelings that they had prior to last week or prior to the Oregon game, because I do think they're warranted about the way that this team wants to play.
This is another word we don't often hear with Ohio State. This is Dan. I think that was a gritty, much-needed win for the players, coaches, and fans. I think Day did a great job managing that game. They could have won by another 14 or more. So some things still need to be cleaned up, and they still haven't put a complete game together. But it does feel like we could all breathe a little easier right now. I like fans and players and coaches being able to breathe. This was another one. This was Alex. This might have been the first one we got. We are so back, baby. Natty or bust. Signed a fan who was ready to fire Ryan Day 6 days ago. I love Alex's self-reflection there. But that is speaking for certainly some portion of fans, is it not? This is the roller coaster of being an Ohio State fan.
It is. And I think I said this on the KOTN late night show we did on Saturday night. It's how Ohio State won, right? I think if Ohio State would have won, honestly, like in almost any other way, people would be excited for sure, and they should be. But I don't know that maybe they'd be as much in we're back mode as the fan base currently is if this game didn't end with the defense getting stops and the offense running out the clock, right?
Yes.
Because those aren't the only boxes, I guess, that Ohio State had to check, but there were two pretty big ones in games like this, and it checked them emphatically, in my opinion. So that Ohio State showed a resolve to do those things when it mattered most on the road against a good team, really hostile environment, and like kind of a clunky game. You sort of like weather the ebbs and flows of a weird kind of game. Yeah, I just thought they showed a lot. So I think something different, like not even showed a lot, showed something different, which is I think why the vibes are so good after this one. Like they'd be good either way, but they're especially good because of how it happened. I didn't actually get a chance to look at it, but someone sent me some clip from another national person who was sort of like downplaying the Ohio State win. And I know there was a show that used Colin Cowherd.
Did he have an opinion after the game?
I don't know. He had to like shoot a video of himself in his car to tell the world that he thought Ohio State was good, not great after that game for some reason. Because people value Colin Cowherd's college football opinions.
I know there was a show that used the word Ohio State survived in the headline that people like were pushing back against. Like that is, but that the fan base, it feels like, especially the dedicated, educated, loyal fans that we converse with here on Kings of Columbus and the podcast, like aren't going to stand for that. Mm-hmm. So enjoy your team, celebrate your team, You don't have to win every game by 30. And like, there's just none of that right now from the fans, that everybody is celebrating this. This is another really good word. So we've had proud, we've had gritty. This is a great word. This is Jake from the 937. The biggest thing I wanted to come out of last week with was reassurance, talking about the Nebraska game. And what I got personally was the opposite of that. Uncertainty about the players in some position groups, and my faith pretty fractured in the coaching staff to put players in the best position to succeed. This game moved me much closer to finding that reassurance. The coaching was so much better today than I even thought. There are still concerns, but I feel much better now. I felt all game like the defense was finally starting to take the lack of wow factor so far this season as motivation. So like and also he said he loves Caleb Downs and can't believe he's here. So that was Jake. So excited about this, but proud, gritty, reassured. I think all those words are very applicable to this win here. I do want to cite, we did a little bit of a quick survey post game with our tech subscribers. If you want to be a tech subscriber, 614-662-4509. You can send the text to that. I tried to just get a gauge, Landis, on where people are. So this was, do you consider that a big win for Ryan Day and the program? So it's like, I didn't say, I wasn't using stats. It's this big win is more like what is subjective, right?
Sure.
The choices were, yes, that was a top 5 game. It's a big win. Or no, I expect Ohio State to beat Penn State. Big wins are more like Michigan games and playoff games. Do you think those are two reasonable yes and no's?
Yeah.
Okay. What percent do you think said yes, that was a big win?
92.
94.
Okay.
So that's good. I think that's healthy, right? You can't only think the big wins are when you lose. Like, I think that's very good on the team for letting fans feel that way, and good on the fans for feeling that way. And then I wanted to try to gauge this. It was basically my freakout meter. It was a 1 to 10 question. How worried, concerned, freaked out were you going into the game? And then how worried, concerned, freaked out are you after the game? So I asked 2 separate questions and I wanted to compare it. It's hard. This freaking out is hard to gauge. So I'm just going to tell you it. Fans were a 6.58 into the game. Like 10 is the most freaked out you can be. 1 is everything's fine. So 6.58 for Ohio State fans on a freakout meter is pretty freaked out, right?
Yeah.
And so after the game, they're a 4.03. So they dropped 2.5 points on the freakout meter, which I think is from in the I have an ulcer zone into the I can go about my life in a pleasing fashion zone, which is a wonderful result for a weekend. Enjoy your Monday, everybody.
Yeah,
so,
and it was more of a drop than that, because there's no way the freakout meter going into the game was only in the 6s. It was higher than that. Yeah, ask people after the fact, and they're basking in the glow of a win, and that number is going to be a little bit lower than it was going into it. I think I would think more realistically that number was like a 7 or an 8 going into the game.
Yeah. So this is another one. How did Ohio State's performance versus Penn State affect your view of the Buckeyes this season? The choices I gave were, I never doubted them. The win confirmed my faith. So I'm in because I was always in. I had concerns and I still do, despite the win. So I was kind of out and I'm still kind of out. Or I was wavering and I was worried and now I feel much better. So I was kind of out and now I'm in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in, out, in. 72% I was wavering and worried, and now I feel better. 17% I still have concerns. 11% never doubted them. Mm-hmm. So 83% in, only 17% still wavering. I think that's good too. I think that's a healthy enjoy your Monday.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little surprised the waiver or the out is that high, but
yeah. I'm a little bit too. I think this was huge for Ryan Day personally, also for a lot of fans. This is Eric. Mm-hmm. It's only fair for me to acknowledge that I was wrong after last week's game. Apparently, we can trust Ryan Day and the coaching staff to get the team prepared for a big game. The game plan on offense and defense, they were fantastic, and that completely remade left side of the offensive line with Hinzman was phenomenal and prepared. The game shouldn't have been that close, and Penn State is a really good team. Good on you, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Jim Knowles, and dare I say, Justin Fry. So this is like people, like coming around on, hey, I was there for the criticism and now I'm here for the praise. This is Ezra. Ezra was texting all game, but really wanted to make the point. I've been ready to call it quits on the Day era, but today makes me think it's possible that he gets it done. Yes, it's James Franklin, but they had a good plan and managed adversity well against a team that had a matchup advantage on them in terms of the pass rush. I'm back to wait and see. Beat Oregon and Indianapolis, and I'm all in. So I think this is a good thing. I think it's nice for fans to believe in their head coach and believe in their staff. And there's a Jim Knowles point I want to talk about. But I think for the Ryan Day doubters, it feels like a lot of people, I think, got a dose of belief.
Yeah, not everyone. I know there's still people out there that probably going to be unmoved from their stance on Ryan Day, regardless of what happened in this game, and will only be moved from it if Ryan Day ends up winning a national championship. But I don't actually think that percentage is incredibly high of Ohio State fans. So I think people who were questioning that faith after the Oregon game and then after Ohio State played last week were made sense to me. Like I was there, right?
Yeah.
But I also agree that this is a performance that should bring you back in a little bit. And if you don't want to, like, to the point of the text, like, beat Oregon and it'll be all the way back in, I get maybe some people not even wanting to fully embrace it, but at least some acknowledgement of this answering some questions I do think is important, even if it doesn't answer every single question on your mind about this team or this program. I really did think that Ohio State addressed some things in this game that should have people feeling better about the direction of things.
Eric P., forgive me for what I said when I was unhappy after Nebraska. Forgiveness. Forgive me. That was a great team win. Mistakes happened, but execution across the board seemed at a championship level. Let's enjoy a Saturday at home next week, right? And then Eric has another good point I want to bring up. And this is the other one. This is like, if Ohio State wins the national championship and we write a Philly Billy and French Vanilli book about it, is the opening scene the post-game locker room with the Penn State win? Like, I think, like, is this potentially that defining? This, I thought, was a very interesting comparison by Isaac. If they win the Natty, this is the 2024 version of the 2014 Michigan State game.
Mm-hmm.
If they win the Natty, Igbenogsen's interception will be the pivot point that the J.T. Barrett to Devin Smith on 3rd and 23, that sideline catch, was in the Michigan State win. That there's a game and there's a moment within the game. Do you agree with this idea that this is, you had both those teams had a loss and then maybe some doubts, and then let us put this down and show you who we are, where this is a chance for it to maybe get away from us, and instead we make a stand?
Yeah, I think so. I actually saw some people floating that idea around on Twitter before the game, that just sort of wondering if this could be that kind of moment. But yeah, I think so. I guess, funnily enough, like the double overtime game against Penn State in 2014 also was a moment. So I guess you could compare this to that too. But I think on the road against I think Michigan State was, I can't remember, they were ranked, like that was a top 10 Michigan State team. I can't remember. This feels more like that, because that Ohio State team, people were hesitant to embrace how good it could be, and I think the team gave you reason to feel that way. And I would say the same thing about this team. And then, it really kind of flipped that script in a major test, and then to have the kind of key moment there to compare the third down conversion and the Igbenogsen interception, I think is pretty solid too. So I embrace the idea. Yeah. Like, will it actually be? Who knows? But I think if the season ends up going the way now that Ohio State wants it to go to, we will look back at this game in a similar fashion to how we look back at that Michigan State game.
This game was the first weekend in November. That Michigan State game was the second weekend in November. This was a 3-4 matchup, but Ohio State was the lesser ranked team. That game was number 8 Michigan State, number 14 Ohio State. Which just is a reminder to you of, like, after that Virginia Tech loss in week 2, like how long it took Ohio State to start climbing back up the rankings. That was the win that got them back in the top 10. So, like, this team hasn't had to drop that far. Let's talk a little bit of ball. There's some offensive line stuff, but I just want to talk about, I thought I had discovered the play of the game, and you're like, Doug, everybody knows this is the play of the game. So I'm slightly, it's fine. But Did you go back and rewatch the goal line stand? I went back
Yeah,
and rewatched the goal line stand before
I
I went
watched
to
the
bed.
goal line stand and I watched the last drive. Yeah.
So the first two plays of the goal line stand for Ohio State, I have no idea what Penn State was trying to do. I thought like they called plays as if they were on the half-yard line and they were on the 3. And they were just slamming the running back straight ahead and like, let's see if we can get half a yard here. It's like, you're 3 yards from the end zone. So the first play got a half yard. They moved from the 3 to the 2.5. And the second play got a half yard. It moved from the 2.5 to the 2. It's so jammed up in there. I honestly am not sure what happened. We didn't get an all 22 view of it. It felt like to me, Cody Simon had his nose in there on both those plays, filling gaps coming up from the linebacker spot. What was your overall evaluation of those first two run calls by Penn State and how Ohio State defended it?
Yeah, I think I thought the plan for Penn State was weird, but that I don't say that to take away from anything that Ohio State did in that situation, because I thought Ohio State did exactly what it needed to do, which is build a wall there, and then with guys like Kaden McDonald and Hero Kanu and Ty Hamilton, which like Tyler Williams not being on the field makes it all the more impressive because he was injured. I think maybe earlier in that drive or maybe the drive before. So it was like textbook goal line stand kind of play, which Ohio State has been good at all year. They get their 5 linemen out there and their 3 linebackers, and they've been pretty stout in those situations. So I wasn't, not that I would take it for granted, but I feel like Ohio State has been really good in those situations all year, whether that is on the goal line or in short yardage anywhere else in the field. They put that package on the goal line package on the field, and it seems like they more or less always control the line of scrimmage.
So those first two plays, I think it was this, right? You're talking about that 5-man front. 5-man front, Sawyer, Hamilton, McDonald, Kanu, and Tuimoloau, right? That's your 5. And then the 3 linebackers, Simon, Styles, and Arvell Reese.
Actually, they might put 4 linebackers on the field.
The third down, they definitely had CJ Hicks on the field.
Yeah,
I'm not
CJ
sure if
Hicks
he was
on
on
the
there
field,
before that.
Yeah.
But then they had Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs, and then they had Igbignosin at corner.
Hicks only played 2 snaps, so I guess he was out there twice. Okay. Yeah.
So, those were the first 2, and then the third down play. Now it's from the 2-yard line. I thought Kaden McDonald made the play of the game, and apparently it is the number 1 topic in North America right now. It is not Doug's secret. There are times like after we talked a lot yesterday, and like I'm gonna go to bed, but I want to watch the goal line stand before I go to bed, and I'm sitting here in the dark in a quiet house with my family asleep, and I see Kaden McDonald blow up a play, and I'm like, oh my God, I must tell the world of what has happened here. And you're like, bro, were you on Twitter at all? So if you did not watch it, if you have a chance to go back and see it, apparently there are clips out there. Kaden McDonald is lined up with that 5-man front. He's lined up right over the center, which first of all is what that 5-man front allows you to do, right? That you're not in a gap. It's like everybody's on a guy, and he is up. He is practically breathing on the ball. So that's good. That's a good start, right? His get off on third down was unbelievable. He was moving. We used to do this with Chase Young. You would go back on Chase Young snaps and be okay, here comes the play. There goes Chase Young. I'm going to freeze it right now. And look how Chase Young is moving. And literally everybody else on the field has not moved yet. And Chase Young is 2 steps into the backfield. That's a get off. You can freeze this play, and Kaden McDonald is destroying the Penn State center that they love, right? Nick Dawkins, right? They love that guy. He is pushing Nick Dawkins backwards, and nobody else is moving yet. And he gets such a get off and has such pad level and explosion on this play. He drove the center so far back that he drove the center back into the motioning guard, who then did nothing on the play because he could not get to his block because Nick Dawkins was in his way. And Kaden McDonald stopped the play before it started. It never had a chance because that young guy came on the field and decided to have an incredible get off with incredible power and blow everything up by himself, and then everybody else just had to clean it up. They did show him after the play like flexing and like, hey, but they didn't talk about it on the broadcast. The reason he was flexing because he single-handedly stopped Penn State on third down. It was awesome.
I thought that I didn't catch him knocking the center back like initially watching it live, but then have watched it a few times since then. And that alone is impressive. But I think that the thing that I thought maybe was most impressive of it was that, so it's Vengo Awane, the guard that Penn State always puts in motion, and he just looks so surprised by the first person he saw being his own center 4 yards in the backfield that he didn't do anything on the play. And it's like, well, I guess you disrupt the path of the pulling lineman there, and then the rest of the play becomes unraveled. But no, like Kaden McDonald has done that, I think, throughout, not maybe to that effect, but he's been a real presence in a lot of short yardage situations for Ohio State. That's why everybody wants to see him play more. He played 10 snaps in this game. That's about what he's played. I think he played 10 last week. He played 12 against Oregon. So I still think there's room to get him involved more. But even if he's not, like, the way that he is able to rise to the moment as a sophomore has been pretty impressive.
I thought it was the single most important rep by an Ohio State player in that game.
Not Igbenogsen's interception.
That was fine. Okay. Maybe Igbenogsen's interception, but
I would say they're equal.
That, I mean, and whatever. I understand they got to the fourth down call, but I feel like if that would have happened in a Georgia game, and that was Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter doing that, there would have been 30 replays of like, look what Jalen Carter in the backfield. I'm like that. But that is often a difference maker of elite teams. It's like, do you have those disruptive interior guys? And I think that's why if you are one of the group of people who wants Kaden McDonald to play more, it's moments like that.
Yeah.
When you destroy plays before they can even begin because you're pushing guys backwards. Man, he pushed that guy backwards. He's got to get like that's a bring the he better whatever. We'll talk about it on Tuesday. I hope Ryan Day gets asked specifically about that on Tuesday, because that's a hell of a rep, brother. Oh
yeah, I'm sure he will. I'm looking now. Nick Dawkins ended up being the lowest graded player for Penn State in that game, but he is a good center.
That's not a weakness. When I was at Penn State Media Day, they couldn't stop talking before the season. They were like, we love Nick Dawkins. Yeah. They love Nick Dawkins. He's a good player, and Kaden McDonald destroyed him on kind of a do or die play for the game. So that's that. Let's talk about the offensive line. Do you want to talk about the offensive line?
I would love to.
I thought this was a proceed with caution PFF grading moment, because Donovan Jackson has a low grade for this game. I get this. I actually don't get this exactly. His PFF pass blocking grade for this game is 0.
Yeah, I don't. Does that, like, that to me is like, okay, then he lost every single pass rush rep, right? Like, that's what you're telling me. We know he got smoked on a couple of them by Abdul Carter, but Abdul Carter didn't have 15 sacks. So why is his? Because I don't know. Was Isaiah Prince's pass rushing grade in a game where he allowed 14 pressures 0? I'm gonna go look that up right now.
I don't know. Well, Zen Mahalski, I was like, this pass block. Zen Mahalski was a 14 last week. And I was like, that's the lowest I've ever seen. I've never seen a 0. I think everybody agrees.
Isaiah Prince did have a 0, but he allowed 14 pressures and 11 hurries on 54 pass block reps.
I know a lot of people watching and listening to this did not watch the 7-hour and 44-minute watch along during that game. But our whole point during that was, there was a point, I guess, late in the first half where Abdul Carter beat Donovan Jackson. And we were like, oh, okay, maybe here that comes. And then it happened maybe 2 more times early in the second half. But our whole point was it had not happened like that until that point. Yeah. And it was a tip of the cap to Donovan Jackson that Abdul Carter is a first-round edge rusher. And this is just starting to happen now, that Carter did figure out, I'm just going to do speed rush and bend it around the edge on this guy who's not a natural tackle. But I mean, whatever. So this is, you can't just throw out stats when you don't like them and note them when you do like them. But that's not a 0. They battled like crazy, brother. Like that's obviously not a 0. Everybody is agreeing here that, in our texter comments, that the left side of the offensive line rose up.
Yeah, no, I think they did. They have 28 pass blocking reps for Donovan Jackson, 4 pressures and 2 sacks from Abdul Carter. So like again, like I know that you can look up how PFF determines its grading. But that being a 0 is odd to me. On the same token, like Carson Hinzman had the best pass blocking grade on the team
Yeah.
on Saturday. So Integra Shabols is really good too. Josh Fryers was good. Tegra allowed 1 pressure. Hinzman didn't allow any. Fryer didn't allow any. Seth McLaughlin didn't allow any. So it was really good performance from the offensive line.
I think 4 pressures, and they weren't whiffs. It was just he just didn't get out in time on the speed rush. He just couldn't get out there, right? Like and so it wasn't. It was just a guy who has not done that much. But I would take that if I was Ohio State.
So yeah. Even if you don't want to look at it from the standpoint of individual pressures allowed by offensive linemen, you can just look at the pressure rate on Will Howard. It was 25%. Like you live with that. You told me going into the game, Will Howard's going to get pressure on 25% of his dropbacks. I'm like, okay, Ohio State's probably going to win then. You know,
yeah,
because I thought it might be 50 or 60.
Yes,
just based off the offensive line shuffling and what I thought of Penn State's defense going into that game, and also kind of how much I thought Tom Allen might blitz Will Howard, which he did a decent amount, 46.4% according to PFF. Okay. That's a win, man. That's 25%, 4 pressures, 2 sacks. That is a win all day for Ohio State's offensive line against that team.
The fear was that Ohio State's offense wouldn't be able to function, and they were able to function. And then, I mean, they won the game at the end, running the ball, and we obviously all know that. But like they still could drop back and throw the ball and not be in a spot where they couldn't even try stuff because they were getting blown up so much. So here's a text about Donovan Jackson. This is from our guy Ryan. Donovan Jackson deserves his flowers. For his first game at tackle to be against Abdul Carter is nuts. Although he got beat a few times, Carter wasn't a game wrecker. Shout out to Chip for helping him with extra blockers and play calling, but the majority of the credit goes to Jackson for stepping up for the team. I think this is a nice moment for Donovan Jackson too, who has been a very important player for Ohio State, but has not always been just on an upward trajectory in his career. Mm-hmm. I think at times has maybe even been, I thought maybe he'd be at an All-American level by now, and he isn't. And a lot of that last year was just, again, playing next to a young center and playing next to a new left tackle. But Donovan Jackson, in his post-game comments, I think you could feel his pride in what this team did, what this line did, what his role was in that. And for a guy who has been, to come up from Texas with family in Ohio and has been a very important 3-year starter at Ohio State, like, this is a nice moment for him to say, they asked me to do something. They called upon me to do something outside of my comfort zone, and I fought my butt off for my team.
Yeah, and I thought you could see it. You could see it in his emotion on the field too, especially in that last drive. He was sort of like the first one looking to the sideline and gesturing a little bit. He was doing the Zeke Elliott feed me thing after a couple of those plays. And I think when Donovan is feeling that good about the way that he plays, it's very similar, I think, to Seth McLaughlin, who brings a lot of the same energy. It's just like, I do think it is contagious for the rest of the line. And I think there was clearly a lot of trust there with Donovan Jackson and Carson Hinzman. I just don't think you get that kind of performance out of those two guys if there isn't. So they both really rose to the occasion. Different pathways to get there, but yeah, I've been someone who has always sort of voiced a little, I guess, disappointment in the way that Donovan Jackson has played sometimes relative to like his draft stock or his recruiting pedigree, however you want to couch it. And I mean, this wasn't his best game. He's played better games than this, but to step out to left tackle in this kind of matchup and hold up, I thought pretty well, certainly well enough, was really impressive.
The offensive line, this is Danny. Let's see. I only have one thought. This is Danny. Offensive line, I eat my shorts. Dominant performance when everyone, including me, was seriously doubting you. Well done. Sorry for ever doubting. Hey, Donovan, I heard from a fan who said he's going to eat his shorts because of what you guys did. Like, that is.
Also, shout out there have been fans who have vowed to eat other things besides their shorts and then putting themselves in tough positions. So,
yeah,
it's good awareness to just leave it at the shorts.
I will eat my own shorts. I just am not here for like let's have someone vow to eat various animal forms of excrement if their team doesn't win, and then let's have them on our show to do it. I don't know. We're not going to do that here. Eric, the offensive line went from a liability to an asset in a game. Do you agree with that? That this is now an asset. This is not just like hey, the offense can function with these guys, but this is we can believe in these guys and they can lead us to do some things.
I don't want to rain on a parade. I might be a little hesitant to embrace like long-term definite asset. It was an asset in this game. I was a little we've talked about it similarly on Saturday night. I was a little hesitant, and then I brought myself around to, well, they were against Penn State. Like what then scares you, I guess, right? So if that's the point of view, then I do think that makes sense. You're just going to now, I don't think it'll be this week or the week after that, but you're going to encounter teams that will have more film on like Donovan Jackson as left tackle and Carson Hinzman as left guard. It's just like, it's not going to get easier for them, I think, to continue to find ways to perform this way, but that doesn't mean they won't be able to do it. So I'm definitely more confident in the offensive line now than I was after the Oregon game when Josh Simmons got hurt, and then after what I saw against Nebraska.
Yes.
Like both of those things put me in a pretty dour headspace, I guess, on what this offensive line could be. And this performance definitely brought me back a little bit from that. And maybe is the best way that I can say it.
Sea change, I think.
Yeah.
So I want to get into Hinzman and how all this happened. This is Eric. Regardless of Zen Michalski's future status, is this the starting 5 offensive line from now on? Do you believe that to be the case?
That's an excellent question, because I was actually just thinking about that like during the show here. So yeah, I think so. Especially if Carson Hinzman just keeps, I'm assuming that this will be the way it looks next week at least. Zen Michalski was on the injury report, but he didn't have like the season-ending designation. I don't think he did. That Josh Simmons has.
No, he did.
He did. TC Caffey has, right? So there's an expectation that Zen will be available at some point again, but I don't think you mess with this if you keep getting good results when he's available to come back. So my assumption is that this is the starting 5 moving forward, regardless of what happens.
Okay. So let me run through these real quick. This is talking about Carson Hinzman / why didn't they get here sooner with this grouping? This is JS. Hinzman seemed to play very well, maybe as well or better than any guard this season. Why is this the first we've seen him play significantly this season? Which is a very reasonable question. This is Nicholas, hoping Ohio State gives the Offensive Player of the Game award to Carson Hinzman. In today's portal world, losing your starting spot is almost a guarantee for the player to transfer. He stuck around, waited for his moment, and was ready to play at a high level. Actually head-scratching how he didn't win the right guard spot in camp based on today's performance. This is Leonard. Joel Klatt mentioned it during the broadcast, but the Hinzman and Jackson left side just seems obvious and has me scratching my head as to why that wasn't a stronger option once Simmons went down. Both have a number of games under their belts, and Hinzman has always played with Jackson on his left. That familiarity in real game situations alone should have driven the answers all along. Chris, I've given a lot of thought to today's victory, and I'm still shocked how well the offensive line held up against the Penn State D-line. Why didn't coaches use Hinzman last week? Why did they leave Michalski in last week? I think this is the last one. This is William, who sent a long thing and said, I had a question pre-written from several weeks ago before the Josh Simmons injury, and he was ranking all the offensive linemen. And now, anyway, it's a very thoughtful offensive line text that ends with, where was Hinzman earlier this year? Evidently, he was in the mix to start, then had the flu in summer camp, and then that relegated him to bench warmer for 7 games. And then there was another one I didn't grab that we talked about this during the watch along to some degree, that Carson Hinzman had an interview with the podcast last year during bowl season where he probably revealed more than the coaches would like him to reveal about what happens in the program. And did that have some kind of impact on his standing within the team? And I think in the end, this has a chance to be just a fabulous redemption story, if that's the word you want to use. Again, on the list of things that some college football players do and are allowed to get back on the field, and everybody's like, he went through adversity, and these are actual, like, real life things that people are are harming people. And Carson Hinzman probably just gave an interview where he said too much. It's minuscule. But do you think that factored in to maybe why we had not seen him before in this role? And now that he's done this with his body of work, he was a highly rated recruit. Like, is this maybe the real Carson Hinzman, and away he goes?
I don't know about the podcast thing. Like, Carson Hinzman wasn't going to start in the bowl game before that podcast ever was published, and then I think delete it very quickly. So I don't think one thing had anything to do with the other. I think Ohio State would have gone out and gotten a transfer center anyway, because Carson Hinzman tried to play last year. He wasn't ready. I think he did the best they could in a really tough spot, but Ohio State knew it had to upgrade its center position no matter what happened. Could that stuff have impacted his path back to the field once that decision was made? Potentially. I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to anybody about that, so I wouldn't be able to tell you definitively one way or the other. I think part of the reason why we had not seen him much prior to this game and had only seen him in backup roles does partly stem from camp when he wasn't available a lot. He was sick. I think he might have been hurt and then sick. So the guys that started the season were the guys who were available in camp and playing. They also had Carson at center. So he was just like the backup center. I don't think he was doing a whole lot of guard stuff once the season started. So that's why you saw Austin Saraveld play ahead of him. That's why you saw Tegra Shabola play ahead of him. And I'm not saying any of this is an excuse. I'm just trying to offer an explanation on how I understand the situation. Like, clearly Ohio State staff got a little too, I think, locked in on, well, this guy's the backup left guard. This guy's the backup right guard. Why would we deviate from what the depth chart is on paper? Which is why Luke Montgomery went to the game last week at left guard instead of anybody else who had more experience than him for one play. So I think they sort of shook themselves out of that a little bit this week in practice by allowing Carson Hinzman to play guard. I think still Ryan Day described it as he was moving around a little bit. So I think he was still doing center because he is still the number 2 center, but was also very clearly playing guard in practice as well, and put together a good week. And that's why he got to the starting lineup. So I think maybe the main answer to all of the why it wasn't Carson Hinzman playing thing is just about maybe being a little too rigid in what the depth chart said and a little less open-minded to shuffling till you find the best 5. And then why they didn't do it against Nebraska, I think, was probably a reticence to move too many pieces around on the offensive line and try to keep as many guys in their spots as you could while having to find a new left tackle. And then that didn't work. So they reassessed and came out with a different plan against Penn State.
I don't think it's egregious to try to find the least disruptive solution, which is plug in one guy and everybody else do your thing. You know, in hindsight, and maybe even in foresight, maybe you would have wished with an off week that they would have been a little more creative. And you were talking about open it up. Yeah. You have this extra time, just throw it all out there and take a day or two of practice to see what you've got, rather than maybe make an assumption and just plug one guy in. But they got here. So they're here now. And I mean, there's two simultaneous things here, that if Carson Hinzman was a young center and now he's kind of a veteran guard, that's two things that changed in his life. One is experience, one is not having to snap the ball. And both those things make sense as to maybe why he would be better at this than he was at the other thing. So I think this is real. I think he's going to be, he was a very good guard on Saturday. And I think he has a strong chance to be a very good starting guard for this team the rest of the year.
I think so too. And I can't remember if he's actually said this. I think he has said this. I think he said he prefers to play guard because snapping the ball just adds a whole other thought process to having to do the job, right? And it's not. That's why when then there is a need at places for a new center, people just suggest, oh, just move this guy here, move this guy there. It's no, playing center is difficult. You have to be able to snap and step and make calls and make sure you're on point with everything. That's a hard job, especially when you're a young football player, and which Carson Hinzman I think still is. This was his 13th start, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense if we've arrived at a point where guard is just a much more natural position for him, and that is where he plays for the rest of his Ohio State career.
I think there are some offensive linemen who love being a center because they love melding their mind with the quarterback and looking around and calling out protections and having that responsibility. They love that mental side of it, and they want to be in charge. I think Luke Whippler was like that. Luke Whippler wants that on him, right? I think maybe a guy like Billy Price just would rather go maul people, right? Like if you're a guard, and I don't know for sure. It's not like I've ever had that conversation with Billy, but sometimes you get moved there. And are you just and neither is better or worse, but it's just what your inclination is. And if Carson Hinzman kind of just wants to go maul people, maybe get out a little bit, pull, go look for a linebacker, just take on a defensive tackle and drive, like, great. So I think, and also now he's done it. So I think there's two things there. And then I think, like with Donovan Jackson, Ohio State, it's not always what you are going to be at the next level. Like Jack Mewhort, for instance, was a good left tackle in the end for Ohio State, who was a guard in the NFL.
Right.
And so Donovan Jackson is not a tackle in the NFL. But can Donovan Jackson, with his tremendous natural talent, with his experience, with his intelligence and his acumen, can he be a good college tackle for the rest of this season? I think he can. Is it the most natural thing in the world for him? Probably not. But can he be more than functional and get better at dealing with edge rushers over the course of the season? And I like the idea, Bill, of sort of what you already said. This is a veteran who's had a little bit of an up and down career. And now they're saying, we need you, Donnie. And that he is taking that. I think that might bring out the best in him, because sometimes with somebody who's had not a bad path, but not a completely smooth path, the way that you can bring out their true self is to give them more responsibility and to look them in the eye and say, we need you. And a person will rise to that moment. And I think maybe Donovan Jackson did that on Saturday and will rise to it the rest of the year. So to have two guys now on the left side who are being asked to do maybe something different, I think that is not a burden. That is a load they will want to carry. Oh, I'm giving myself chills, Landis. Let's go with the left side of the offensive line.
I think he could be onto something for sure. I think it's quite possible that what we saw from Donovan Jackson at left tackle against Penn State will be maybe the worst of what we see from him too, right? Like he'll just keep, part of it's the matchup, but I think I'd imagine.
Show me another Abdul Carter. Carter.
I would imagine that was a pretty big mental hurdle to get over for Donovan Jackson, just because he's a human being and human beings have self-doubt sometimes. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to move to a new spot. And then I got to block this guy across from me. And then again, it wasn't perfect, but I thought for a long stretches of that game, it was pretty good. To now get on the other side of that, I think could do tremendous things for him.
Yeah. Ups and downs. Just Heather, I thought, had a good text that I just wanted to cite for kind of these ups and downs. After the Oregon game, I felt mostly good, other than the loss of Simmons, even in a loss. After Nebraska, I felt much worse in a win than after the actual loss. After this win, I'm ecstatic. A win built on fixing the major issues that arose in the last two games: offensive line, defensive line, play calling, late game coaching. The only thing that didn't look that good was the passing game, and I'm confident that will be fine. So I think that's a good encapsulation of like the nature of riding with your team, right? Is there another guy? Was this a propulsive moment for another dude in this game, Landis? And was that dude Jim Knowles? Kyle says, big takeaway from me today. Not that anyone cares. We do care, Kyle. We do. We like you guys. Here's the thing. You guys watch this team and know as much about this team as we do. And like you come up with stuff sometimes like, man, I didn't even think of that. So we do care. More than anyone else, Jim Knowles, that felt like the perfect mix of don't overexpose yourself, but when it matters, they brought pressure and didn't let Drew Aller pick them apart. Somehow it was great that some 3rd and 8s, it felt like we dropped everyone and they had nothing. And the other 3rd and 8s, we brought everyone and he had to rush. It never felt like our defense dominated, but at key moments, it felt like exactly what we pay Knowles $2 million a year for. I think we've had varying discussions, Landis, about, again, Jim Knowles. Well, you get here and you want to be aggressive. Now you're blitzing too much. Now you're putting guys on islands. Okay, let's back off. Now we just don't want to give up big plays. Okay, now we're not being aggressive enough. Was this all the experience that Jim Knowles has had at Ohio State, was this a culmination of the right balance of aggression and non-aggression, of it not just being a science but an art, and that he called the kind of game that could be something that he can look back on and say, like, this is how to pull the strings for this defense?
I think it's a culmination of all those experiences, but I also think it is the result of some hard conversations that were had after the Oregon game, like sort of a line in the sand kind of moment that you got to let Jim Knowles sort of do what he does, for better or worse. Maybe for some people that doesn't sound like a winning proposition, but I think for the first time, maybe since the beginning of his tenure here, the last 2 weeks have looked more like a Jim Knowles defense, with what he wants to do with his coverages, what he wants to do with the back end of his defense and his safeties, and then what he wants to do with the front. Like, short of playing the Jack Leo position, I'm not talking about that, but even one of the Penn State offensive linemen said after the game that Ohio State was running run stunts to really gum up their rushing attack that they had never put on tape before, that they weren't prepared, that Penn State wasn't prepared for, they hadn't seen from Ohio State, weren't expecting from Ohio State. But I think that is the kind of stuff that Jim Knowles wants to do with his front. That Ohio State had just gotten away from for one reason or another, and wasn't privy to those conversations that happened after the Oregon game. I just know that they happened because Ryan Day said they happened. But the results, I think, have been pretty good since then. I thought last week we saw sort of the seeds of it, and then this week felt like another step forward in that area. And I thought Knowles called a good game. I thought he seemed to have a better feel for when the pressure and when not to, and then when it was time to pressure, what kind of pressures he should call. And it just, I don't know if it's familiarity with Andy Koltnicki or just feeling differently about playing against Penn State or what. I like for the first time in one of these big games, it really just felt like Knowles was the one who was in control the entire time when Ohio State's defense was on the field.
And that is not coincidental. That is a build to this, which is why sometimes you just have a good game, but it doesn't really mean anything. Sometimes you have a good game, sometimes you have a bad game. To your point, if it came after hard conversations, if it came after games in his career in Columbus where they've done too much, games in his career in Columbus where they've done too little, and now in a 3-4 matchup on the road against a good offensive coordinator and a veteran quarterback, this was the result. I think that travels. That to me is something that this is not a one-off. This is maybe now the new, they've found something here, which I think would be very, fans should be excited about that.
Yeah. I don't know if people if anybody who's watched this at this point has gone and watched Austin's notebook video that he did after the game, but he grabbed Jim Knowles for a few minutes to talk about it. And Jim was a man of few words. He didn't say much, but after Austin had walked away, Jim Knowles went back and chased him down to show Austin that stat, which Jim Knowles' agent had sent him about. This was the first time that Andy Koltnicki's offense was held without a touchdown since Jim Knowles did it in 2021 when he was at Oklahoma State. And Jim Knowles was super fired up about that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I couldn't tell what this one is. This is Noah. I'm just here to hear how Ryan Day and Jim Knowles duct taping a team together to get a top 5 road win with his defense not giving up a single touchdown and beating the spread is in fact soft or fraudulent. That's from Noah. I don't know if he's implying that he thinks we're going to say that or that the national media is going to say that.
I don't think anybody's saying that.
I would have a very hard time looking at that and not thinking of that as a very good win. I just don't know.
The word soft and fraudulent could not be further from my mind after watching.
So I think that's sarcastic. So I don't. Yeah. So let me. This is something about Nebraska game. This is Jackson waking up today with the perspective that we played one crappy game against Nebraska after losing our borderline pro left tackle, but still won and lost by a point to what currently looks like the best team in the country at their place. I'm feeling pretty good about where we are this morning. That's Jackson. So I think that's a well said that you should feel pretty good about that. I do think, you and I did a watch along on Saturday of the Oregon-Michigan game too. And I don't know that there are a lot of people who were doubting that, but that's a good Michigan defense. They are Will Johnson didn't play. They're more iffy in the secondary than Ohio State is for sure. They still have a bunch of pros out there who can really get after you, especially on the defensive line. And for at least the first half, just like Oregon does, like they kind of did what they wanted to do. I do think, and I was sort of saying like, hey, I think people are realizing Oregon's the best team in the country. And you were sort of saying like, what do you mean? Like, why would this change your mind? I already thought that. But maybe there should be some reassurance for Ohio State fans in that like Oregon really is good. And now Oregon has some injury issues. Tez Johnson, their best receiver, hurt his shoulder. Seems like his shoulder. Micah Harper, is it Micah Harper or Mitch Harper? What's the right?
Marcus Harper.
Marcus Harper, their right guard, got hurt in that game. So now they have some injury things to deal with, just like Ohio State had some injury things to deal with. But there may be some, if anybody needed it, some self-reflection of like, it's a reminder that Oregon is quite good. And to the text we had earlier, I do think that Oregon right now, based on body of work and their efficiency and explosiveness on both sides of the ball, they're the best team in the country. And Ohio State took them within a point at their place. And so in the big picture thing, as you're sitting back as an Ohio State fan right now, that I think that should have factored in before. But if it wasn't quite there for you, I think there's more evidence now of like, that's really the case here. That there's no doubt about how good Oregon is.
Right, which is it also speaks to the quality of Ohio State that I mean has always been there, and then this game I think was reaffirming in that regard. It does make like playing so flat against Nebraska a little more puzzling, but I in the midst of all the conversations we had about that game, which I know people didn't like a lot of it, I at least tried to acknowledge that sometimes teams just play that way, and it doesn't necessarily mean much other than you had a kind of an off week, but. This was obviously a really good response with the way that Ohio State showed up in this game, compared to how they played last week.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I didn't like about that was that it was back at home with an off week that like, this is okay. Like get your feet under you and why did it happen? So we had a couple of those. I was going to save those for the end because it's not about us, but we also are here for criticism. This is Marlon. What was your pick, by the way? What was your score pick just for the record?
I picked Ohio State 24-20.
24-20. What was the final score? Tell me again.
20-13.
20-13. Okay. I picked 28-23 Ohio State, just to double check. All right. Marlon, people were influenced by the negative coverage of something far too common, kids playing a bad game. I'm still in awe of you guys missing the mark so badly, and I love you guys. But to make Penn State out to be some juggernaut was ridiculous. Here's a little secret for free. Indiana, while good, is no juggernaut either. They're catching teams at the perfect time, Sparty at the end of a 5-week gauntlet. They aren't 37 points better than Michigan State. They aren't 49 points better than Nebraska. They will hammer Michigan, though. Ohio State is fine. They'll rematch Oregon and make the playoff. So
does he want us to pre-downgrade Ohio State's win against Indiana then? Is that what he's asking for?
I guess that might be one of those. That's not the only person. This is Jason. Congrats to Will, Coach Day, and the whole team. Their back was against the wall and they delivered. My learning is that our notoriously crazy fan base and Ohio State press overreacted to a squeaker of a win against a pretty good Nebraska team. It's clear now they were more focused last week on the Penn State game and were also calling run plays for the season rather than that specific game. Also, I very much have enjoyed your coverage over the last few years, but it was really bad this past week with all of the negativity. I expect more objective, balanced analysis from you all and not overreacting like an average Ohio State fan. So we're here for critiques for sure.
No, I think like especially Tuesday after the press conference, and I guess it would have been also the Wednesday morning they were recorded on that same day. Like I thought we were kind of off base with the conversations we were having. We were like analyzing way too much like body language and mood. And not so much the football. I don't know. Overreact in Nebraska, I guess in hindsight is probably fair. I don't know that I'm ever going to watch a team play as flat as Ohio State played in that game and just sort of be like, oh, well, it's fine, right? Because I don't think people want to hear that either. If it went too far, then I guess I'll take that criticism. But I don't know that the post-game analysis of that was off base as much as maybe the conversations on Tuesday and Wednesday were, because I do agree with that, and I've responded to some people to that extent. Like I people didn't like, I think, what we were saying on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, and I actually agree with it. I didn't like it in the aftermath either. After I went back and listened to a lot of it.
Yeah, we're not infallible. We're here for it. We're here for it. We try our best, just like everybody. But sometimes, hey, we have a bad we have a bad game too. Let me go here because this was me. This was me banging the drum on this. Let Jeremiah Smith go win this game, and I'm curious your view on this, Bill. Jeremiah Smith did lead Ohio State in targets. He had 7, 4 catches. Quinshon Judkins had 5. Carnell Tate, Emeka Ibuka each had 3. Brandon Ennis 2. G. Scott 2. Travion Henderson 1. Jelani Thurman 1. I'm very intrigued by the let's take our good receivers off the field, put in our backups, and then throw to them because nobody will expect it, which I think they did twice, at least in that game. It is.
Yeah, I want to ask Chip Kelly about that this week.
I really think there is something there that Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka aren't in the game. And if you're a defensive back, you go, huh, and then Brandon Ennis runs past you. Yeah, I think it's human nature. And I think I could see Chip Kelly and Ryan Day having a conversation about the nature of man in their office and like Thoreau and sitting in the woods. And it's like, what if we took Jeremiah Smith out of the game? And it's like, is Jeremiah Smith better than Marvin Harrison Jr.? Maybe. But what if we took him out? We're on to something here. So Jeremiah Smith led in targets. He did not dominate this game. And 2 people brought this up. This was Eric. I felt like Jeremiah Smith looked like a freshman today, but his block on the Will Howard keeper to seal it was awesome. That was the one where Howard fumbled right at the goal line, right? But Smith did make that edge block. Yeah. And then Eric said, Will's throw that JJ seemed to misread or lost in the sun was Howard's best throw of the year. Placement, spiral, etc. Should have been a touchdown. So I still don't know that we have a great handle on that because just what the TV showed was that Jeremiah Smith was kind of restarting after slowing down, but you couldn't see the full route to see maybe why he did slow down. Jeremiah Smith did not dominate this game, and Marvin Harrison Jr. had dominated the previous 2 Penn State games. Is this a check mark towards Marv in the would you rather have a senior Marv or a freshman Jeremiah Smith conversation? Because this was go time, and it's not that Jeremiah Smith was bad, but they did not go to him 15 times. There was something funky in that route. And the texter who said he felt like a freshman this game. Do you think that's a valid observation?
I don't think that Jeremiah Smith ever feels like a freshman. Like I get this sentiment. Like, we were expecting a big game, so we probably set people's expectations for that, and then it wasn't quite that. But like, I don't. To me, like to say you play like a freshman is to suggest that like he played poorly and was making a lot of mistakes, and I don't know that I felt that in the course of the game. Yeah, the one route was weird, but he also had like a huge third and 9 reception too, right? So I don't know that I felt like he looked overwhelmed. He just didn't get as many targets as I thought he was going to get, I guess is how I feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to say this during the offensive line conversation. I just want to say this quickly. I'm actually surprised by this survey results. Last survey question. How are you feeling about Ohio State's offensive line? Choice is Landis. I thought the O-line was just okay, and I still have concerns. So that's like not that great in the game, still worried for the future. I thought the offensive line played well, but I still have concerns. I like them in this game, but I still have concerns for the future. Or the offensive line with Jackson and Hinzman seems fixed and ready to roll rest of the season. I like them in this game, and I feel good for the rest of the year. What do you think won the vote there?
Oh, I think like them in this game, but still have questions. Won narrowly over like them in this game and like them for the future.
Oh, you're very good at this. Maybe not narrow, but close. 59%. The offensive line played well, but I still have concerns. That's higher than I expected. 36%, it seems fixed and they're ready to roll. Only 5%, I only thought they were actually okay in the game, and I still have concerns. I would vote it's fixed. What would you have voted?
I would vote with what won, but
okay.
Yeah.
What are your concerns still for the offensive line the rest of the season?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess the fact that I can't like rip one off the top of my head makes maybe suggest that I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe just like really overloading Donovan Jackson and see how he handles that. I thought Tegra Shabola played really well. This might have been his best game. I think Joel Klatt might have said that during the broadcast, but watching it, I kind of agreed with it. But he needs to sustain that level like that. This was a really good game for him. That should be a stepping stone to something else. But I guess I just like want to see that happen before I fully embrace the idea of that happening. So my questions aren't my questioners or concerns, whatever, are not anywhere near as high as they were before the game, but they're still kind of lingering in the back of my mind a little bit.
Because I do think, didn't we think the offensive line through the first half of the season had played better than expected?
Yeah, I think through the Iowa game. Yeah.
And so, do you think this line, the way they played, like is back close to the Josh Simmons' healthy offensive line? Or
could be. Yeah, I don't know that it'll ever be, just because Josh Simmons is a really good player. Right? I just want to like give perspective to what he is and what he brings to the table. So I don't know that I'd say that they're all the way back there or will get all the way back there, but I have much more belief in them getting pretty close to back there than I did 2 days ago.
I do think you can have a left tackle who's just like an athlete and has great length and great feet and just moves and does all the things that you want to do. And Josh Simmons is certainly closer to that, right? Like that's what everybody has said. Like he's what you want a lot of ways in a left tackle. And then I do think you can have a left tackle who's a grinder, who's just like, I will throw my body in front of you to do whatever I have to do to try to protect my quarterback here. It might not be pretty. You might get me a couple times, but it's going to be a fight. And so I think that's where you are with Donovan Jackson. And it might not be as pretty, but I'm here for the fight. So I want to have a 45-minute conversation with Donovan Jackson about what happens with you when you maybe have some questions about yourself and your team says, you can't have any more questions. We need you. And you say, okay, I've got it. And that fortifies you as a human. I'm giving myself chills again. The Donovan Jackson story coming soon on Kings of Columbus. Last couple things here. I thought this was an interesting point. This is our guy, Steven, always smart. The Buckeyes are an offense executing well away from being at the top again. So he just would like to see a little more consistent execution from the offense. Again, their efficiency metrics, again, down to down, are about as good as anybody in the country. Playoffs favor teams peaking late in the season. And Ohio State still has a chance with some things to clean up. Like that is, again, we just have to get there in the 12-team playoff. That's one of the ways we have to adjust our thinking. Find a way to get in and try to be playing your best football when you are in. And again, the issue with Ohio State has been having something that happened during the regular season that kept them out. So the 17 team and the 18 team and the 21 team didn't even get to take their shot. So it's still that consistent belief that if you give Ohio State a shot in the playoff, I think more often than not, you're going to like their chances. So especially a team that maybe has fixed some stuff and maybe has gained some confidence. I think there's a lot of that would make a lot of sense of they're not perfect, but they're figuring some things out. And I'm feeling good about where they're going to be in December. I think that's really smart. This is a Will Howard question I think is valid from Matthew. Here's my concern. I like Will Howard, but he seems like he is prone to one or two huge mistakes in a game. And I don't think you win a natty and have a game with a huge mistake in it. So, I mean, it's undeniable. He threw a pick six and he fumbled a sure touchdown out of the end zone at the 2-yard line. So those are two gigantic mistakes. They're points off the board or on the board mistakes. Yep. I don't know that it is like, oh my God, it's all on you. How could this happen? But they did happen. So that is not he's playing well, but those two things also happen. So what should fans think of it?
I think it's fair to be concerned about it. I really like how Will has responded to almost every mistake he's made this year. It's yes, they happen. Yes, they drive you crazy in the moment. I would maybe push back a little bit on you can't win a national championship with a quarterback who makes mistakes, because I just college quarterbacks, think by their nature, are a little loose with the ball sometimes. So I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't winning a national title does not require a perfect Will Howard. And he's got to be a little smarter at times with some of the throws that he makes, no doubt about that. A veteran quarterback should see the coverage that led to the pick six, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, at the risk of offering unsophisticated analysis, like I just kind of think he's a gamer, and I'll take the trade-off, I think, of being somewhat loose at times with a guy who's kind of going to do whatever it takes to win a game, which I think he's done in the two biggest games that Ohio State has played. One of them was a loss still, and one of them was a win here. But I feel like I've seen a lot more good from Will Howard in those games than I've seen bad, even if the bad, especially against Penn State, was potentially catastrophic. The team found a way to overcome it, and I thought he rebounded nicely after those moments to help lead Ohio State to a win. So I don't know that I'm like super concerned about it, but obviously you'd like to see him clean it up a little bit.
I don't think he's careless. And I don't think you look at him and think, my God, this guy does not know what he's seeing. He's seeing ghosts. He's not reading coverages. I mean, you said that on the watch long from the jump of that's just a bad read on that coverage, that he should have been able to tell that it's not man, right? That they switched off routes and that a veteran quarterback should be able to handle that. But I don't think you watch Will Howard and ask yourself, like, what is this guy doing? So that's an individual bad moment that turned, and to Penn State's credit, sometimes you have a bad moment like that and the guy knocks down a pass. In this moment, the guy picked it off and returned it for a touchdown because they're a good secondary. They're a good team. Mm-hmm. But I do think, I mean, even so, like the fumble is born out of, we're going to trust our quarterback to run it in the red zone. Like we're going to call that because we believe he's physical enough and talented enough to do something here, which is you have to have a belief in your quarterback to allow that to happen. Not getting down at the end of the game in Oregon is like him deciding that out route's not going to be enough. I'm going to go. It's not like he just ran and he just got down a little bit too late, but he's trying there and he's not oblivious while he's trying. He just was like a scooch off. And so I think everybody's right here. I think I understand what the texter's saying, but I don't know that anybody should, and this is what you're saying. It's not like Ohio State fans should be going through the rest of the season worried that Will Howard's going to blow it for him, that he's going to make the mistake that's going to kill him. I acknowledging what happened in the Penn State game, I don't think that should be the vibe.
It's not my vibe. I guess I won't tell people how they should feel or not, but yeah, I just like a lot of what I've seen from him in like kind of some pivotal moments. So I guess I value those more than like an early game blunder or two. But maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. Last couple we'll just run through really quick. Rich, great win for the program, but concerned about the offense leaving too many points on the field with self-inflicted wounds, which is kind of what we were just saying, right? There was a little bit of a vibe, Landis, of people thinking like, good win, it could have been bigger. Like Eric said, I feel like the final score didn't resemble how the game felt watching it. Ohio State felt much more in control and able to dictate what they wanted to do much more than Penn State. A couple weird breaks went against us and made the game closer in the score. It could have easily been a 21-point victory. Do you agree with that idea that Ohio State was just much more in control?
Yeah, I think I said it to you. I don't remember if I said it. I think I might have said it when we were on a break that Ohio State went down 10-0, came down and scored and made it 10-7. And like from that point on, I just thought Ohio State was in control of the game. And if the ball doesn't hit off Will Howard's thigh and go over the pylon, that's what, a 21-10 lead for Ohio State. Yeah. And then the 10 is because Will Howard threw a bad pick. So it wasn't, there were opportunities there for sure to make the score a little more lopsided than it was. And Ryan Day, like, I think admitted that afterward. He wasn't going to do anything other than celebrate the win, but I think he acknowledged that they could have made life a little easier on themselves than they did at the end of the game. But you'll look back in every game and find moments like that, right? They're just heightened in a game like this. So yeah, I think that's the offensive execution question or comment that we had a couple of minutes ago, right? Like I think what we've seen from the defense and the way that it's tweaked things is super encouraging moving forward. And I believe that the offense will clean some things up. And like when you think about the idea of putting those two things together for Ohio State, then you're back on track to we're back, baby. I don't know that I disagree with that, but also Penn State was on the doorstep twice and got no points. And so there's a part of me that's like, oh, Ohio State could have won by 21. It's like, well, it was great coverage by Davis Magnoson, but it also was kind of a goofy pick that wasn't initially ruled a pick. And that was a big deal. And then the goal line stand is
great by Ohio State, but also if one of those 4 plays works, then that's 7-2. So
yeah, well, I guess
don't
maybe
know.
the sentiment is more that Ohio State very well could have had more than 20, right?
Yeah,
If Will Howard doesn't
right.
fumble that ball, and I can't
The
remember,
pass to Smith,
they didn't score on
the
Jeremiah
Jeremiah,
Smith drive,
yeah,
right? So that's 2 touchdowns there. Like it's whatever.
yeah,
This is a win the game. I don't care what the score is, kind of situation.
yeah.
But there were definitely some opportunities left out there to get more points.
I did, and I mean, it wasn't like an unbelievable play, but the Tyler Warren run direct snap that got them down to the 3 that then led to the goal line stand. For a second there, it felt like he might go to the house.
Yeah.
And Denzel Burke was on the sideline there, like trying to fight with a receiver to get through and stop him. And he fought enough to get Tyler Warren out of bounds.
Yeah.
And if you just kind of, not that a player would give up there, but if you don't fight enough and you just kind of get blocked, he could have scored there. And so, like, that is also just those little things of like, man, this is a big play, but they didn't let him get in, and it turned out to change the game. So, just a little bit of a tip of the cap to like throw your body. That's not throw your body in front of somebody. However, you got to do it. Yeah. Last couple very specific things. Anton, what do you think of the bunch formation? We've pulled out a couple times, running multiple mesh concepts out of it. I haven't seen that from this team so far, but it worked tremendously well against man coverage. Any thoughts, football coach Landis?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was you put like Emeka Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith kind of in that, it's almost like a wing position, and then like run them back across the formation behind the line of scrimmage and pair it with like play action. It really just messes with defensive backs, especially if you catch them in man coverage. So I thought that design was good. I thought Chip Kelly, I thought called an awesome game, but I also think formationally and specifically with what he was doing with Emeka and Jeremiah Smith, and I guess the backup receivers when he put those guys in the game too, really stressed Penn State's defense formationally. And that was also stuff like, again, bring something new to the table. Like I thought there was a lot of new that we had not seen from Ohio State's offense in that game against Penn State. And I thought Chip brought a lot of new stuff to the table against Oregon too. So like yes, more offensive execution, no doubt about it. You want to see that. But in the 2 biggest games this year, I thought the offensive plan was really good. Like clearly Chip Kelly had spent a lot of time thinking about how to attack Oregon's defense and how to attack Penn State's defense, and attack Penn State's defense in light of reshuffling the offensive line. And I thought both times he kind of nailed the plan.
This is a game time question from Jeff. How do you feel about the pushback the Ohio State fans are getting for the fact that Ohio State Penn State was not a night game? I know Big Noon Kickoff was Fox's big initiative to counter ESPN, but are there some instances where Fox's best interests run against the interests of the Big Ten? Do they either need to concede that NBC needs to get some of the better games to put them in prime time, or is noon still the time slot the Big Ten owns? My personal feeling is, aside from the game, which will always be at noon, you should trust that your big brand games can go up against the SEC, even if that means giving NBC those games. So the problem is that this is a divided network situation with CBS, NBC, and Fox, but Fox is first among equals, and Fox is like taking what they're taking. So it's just a draft. And Ohio State, Michigan is always going to be first on the draft, and Fox is always going to have the first pick. And so that's always going to be at noon. But Oregon, Ohio State was at night. So now it's like, so this is like, I understand the frustration of Penn State fans because they want that whiteout. And everybody who's watched or been to those games when Ohio State has played them, I think that's the best version of the whiteout. Is it not? Ohio State at Penn State at night is the best whiteout. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
So I understand the frustration, but I sort of don't know what to do with it, because there's 1,000 things to be frustrated with about college football. And most of them, the answer is, well, money dictates. And that's the answer here. So like, I don't know what to do unless Penn State wants to give back some of the TV money so they can play their games wherever they want to play. But this is what the conference and the schools have chosen to do, is give their sport to TV. And there's a lot of benefits to that. But one of the things that's not a benefit is you do not get to pick your start times. So it's a discussion point, but I don't know that anything's going to change, or frankly, that anything should change if you want to live in the real world.
I mean, I don't understand like the TV economics enough to know how much of a difference it would make for Fox to put some games at night or to reshuffle the deck a little bit. I don't know what the Big Ten's place is in the conversation of trying to get that dynamic to change a little bit. I do think it's hurting the Big Ten. Like, you at some point want to be able to showcase your best environments, and the only way you can get that is if you're playing big time night games. That's just the nature of the sport. And Beaver Stadium like sounded really good. I know it was the biggest crowd they've ever had. Ohio State has played night games in the shoe where the environment has definitely been, or excuse me, played noon games in the shoe where the environment has been pretty good. But like some of these marquee games need to be at night. It really shocks me that Fox doesn't realize that, or like can't find a way to make it a viable product for themselves. The only reason the Ohio State Oregon game was at night is because Fox valued this past weekend more than that weekend, because it was the weekend before the election, and the advertising dollars were too much to pass up. Otherwise, Ohio State Oregon probably, I don't know that it would have been at noon because it's on the West Coast, but I think it would have been a 3:30 game.
But aren't they locked in their slots? Fox gets noon, CBS gets 3:30, and NBC
yeah,
gets
but then go
time?
back to the table and change it. Like, why? Or I don't know. Like, the TV controls everything. I get that. Why there can't be more give and take between TV and the conference to make sure like the conference is positioning, because the conference positioning itself well is also good for TV, right? Like one hand washes the other a little bit. So to put your marquee programs in a position where they can't have big time recruiting weekends like they want to, and then just not to have your best brands, I think, in front of a lot of primetime Saturday night eyeballs, I think at some point does do the conference and maybe even networks themselves a disservice. I'm not saying scrap big noon. I'm just saying maybe play Ohio State, Penn State at night. maybe
make a
maybe
couple
that's
exceptions.
enough. Yeah, maybe that's enough, no matter where that game is.
Because Fox is not giving up the game in the draft. So Fox is not going to say, that's fine, we won't take Ohio State, Penn State. But could you say on a weekend, all right, big noon's our thing, but for this weekend, we're going to move the NBC game to noon. We're going to play the Fox game at night. And ESPN does do that. Just because they have a game day on set doesn't mean they won't have a primetime game with their best crew. You don't have to lead straight in from your pregame.
They do it all the time. More often than not, they're not even covering the game that they're
right
for game day.
And this is a strategy that Fox has settled on. You can't ask them to give up the games. Can you ask for exceptions in time slot rotations? I think that could be reasonable, but also that's what the money's for. Like, I don't, why is Rutgers in the Big Ten? It's like, so we know what the answer is. Is there a solution? Maybe you find a solution there, Landis. You're a problem solver. Yeah, I didn't see this. I didn't ask you about this. If your answer is what, we'll cover it in the middle of the week. Donald from Marysville. CEO Ryan Day showed his medal today. His paying attention to the defensive side of the ball paid dividends. On my TV at home, I could hear him yelling sneak as soon as Ty Warren went in motion before calling timeout. Granted, Knowles could have called that from the box, but I'm reminded of Kirby Smart calling timeout before the fake punt in the playoff 2 years ago. I did not clock that. Did you clock that? And I did not have time to go back and find it.
I mean, I know they called timeout. I didn't clock Ryan Day yelling sneak, but Penn State's done that before. Penn State did it last week, didn't they? So
but if the idea is a head coach who doesn't have his head buried in a play sheet, who's more holistic about the whole team being aware,
that's what happened.
If that's what happened.
Yeah.
So
I just didn't catch it. Yeah.
No, I didn't. So well said by that. And this is the last one, which is, I just want to read a portion of this because it's the first time I've ever heard this. This is from Will. Someone thinks I talk too much, Landis. Can you believe that?
I can't.
Yeah. I love the watch along. I wish you guys would do the watch along for every Ohio State game. Much better than any national commentary team. I will tune into you two doing commentary and mute the national channel for every game you guys do. Now, a few critiques. Strap in. I feel like you guys tried to put things in a national context a lot throughout the game. I would almost prefer a more narrow focus for this type of thing. Tighten the focus on the game itself. Different than podcasting where the idea is largely the national context. So the thing, like the KOTN thing, like that's not just for Ohio State and Penn State fans. So I don't want to get too specific and in the weeds, but I thought we were still more specific than a national call would be. But do you think that we should have been more specific, even more on the game and not doing national talk during it?
I wasn't watching anything other than the Ohio State Penn State game, so I don't like. Is that just like mentioning other games that were happening? I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. If we were like, I would prefer that to be a focus on the game at hand and not so much other stuff. But I
Okay.
kind of felt like that's what we were doing.
And Bill, feel free to push back here if you would like. You may even interrupt me to push back on this. Secondly, I love you, Doug, but you talk a lot. Do you want to push back yet? No? Okay, you're still silent. Maybe let it breathe just a little bit more. You don't want to push back there? Okay. The dynamic between you two where you float ideas to Bill and Bill adds his expert opinion is really enjoyable. But sometimes I think Bill gets flooded when you just float a lot of ideas all at once. Do you want to push back there at all? No? You're still okay? Again, I loved it and hope you do it for a lot of Ohio State games. Looking forward to a Sunday show. So no pushback from Landis on Doug says a lot of stuff that you are trying to juggle in trying to answer 4 things at once. And then I'm already moving on to the next thing and never stop talking.
There was a lot going on. Yeah, I felt like I see like you were a little nervous about dead air.
Well, here's the thing is like, I was not viewing it as like, we're not calling the game.
Right. It's very different. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're watching the game, but I actually, we'll wrap up here. I actually never considered having 1 second of dead air. The idea that maybe there should have been a dead air is so foreign to me because it's not like on this show we stopped talking for 15 seconds. So I just treated it the same. And it was almost like people are just hanging out with us. And incidentally, there's a game on.
Yeah.
So I was maybe first screening us, second screening the game when the whole world was first screening the game and second screening us. And people are like, would you shut up? It's 3rd and 6. Can I watch this play without you spouting off about Indiana's machine-like efficiency? It's Ohio State, Penn State. Cram it, Doug, for 10 seconds. Point taken. No pushback from Landis. All right. We can't do that often. Except that there's a world where maybe we think we should do that every week and we just never go to another game again. So we'll see. We have to work it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that won't be the last time we do it, but I don't think we'll do it every. No offense, like if we do it for Purdue and Northwestern, I don't think the audience will be the same. You know what I mean? So, but maybe there's a conversation to be had about because we were like, wait, we'll go to the Ohio State Indiana game. I was like, well, maybe we should do that instead.
I will say, if we do it for Ohio State Northwestern, I'm going to be like, guys, it's 3rd and 14. Let's dial it back and watch what the Wildcats try to conjure up here. Here we go. Is that what people want? Is that what you want? That's what you want? Nobody wants that. Okay. We had a great time. Thanks to anybody who participated in that, whether it was for 5 minutes or 5 hours. Thanks for being here on a Sunday Sound Off. We really obviously enjoy doing this for this Ohio State audience and having the interaction with our dedicated, educated, loyal Ohio State fans. And we are excited, Landis, that Ohio State fans are feeling good today. That's really important. We want all of the Northern fan bases to feel good. But I thought it was super open and transparent and interesting that Ryan Day let it be known how important this game was to him in the program. And I think it was that important to the fans as well. And I think it has a chance to be something that Ohio State fans look back on this one and talk about and remember for a long time, depending how the rest of the season goes.
Yeah, no, I think this is what do they call it? Is it a linchpin? Is that the right word I'm looking for? No,
yeah,
that's
that
not
sounds
the right
right.
word.
I don't know.
It's some kind of pin.
Pin and pull? Is it a pin and pull?
It's a pin and pull. What is the word? I can't remember the word. We talked too much yesterday. I'm out of words. I have no word
for real. For real. Believe it or not. That's what it takes. How do we run out of words? Because we did 7:44. We did an hour Saturday night, and we did an hour and a half today. So it's like 10 hours of ball talk in a weekend, but we'll take it. All right. Thanks to our producer, Mike Krastowski, for always helping us out, getting these graphics set up and that kind of thing. We will see you Monday on Kings of the North, live noon Eastern on YouTube. We'll see you Wednesday for Kings of Columbus, where we are just going to absolutely grind out a huge big game breakdown of Ohio State Purdue.
Can't wait.
Or not. We'll figure something else out. Always fun, Landis. Do you need a break from me? Be honest.
No, I if you said we're going to do another 8-hour rewatching your basement tomorrow, I might pass on that. But I think otherwise I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mostly just because it got hot. It got hot in there.
Yeah. My wife, as a person who has to live with me, is always on alert for people who get too much Doug, because she gets more Doug than anybody, and it is too much. And so she's always like, is that too much Doug? It's okay if you can say it. So we had a good time. Thanks to the audience. Always appreciate you guys for your Ohio State and college football passion. And it allows us to even contemplate this being a job, which again, still sometimes blows our minds that we get to do this and feed our families with it. So thanks to you guys for making it possible. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Sunday Sound Off on Kings of Columbus.